Thomas, dan let you go.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mrs. Ineke Schuit, the organist for today, and we will hear more from her when the procession leaves again in the end. Dear all, a very warm welcome to this academic ceremony, during which we will celebrate our wonderful university's 48th anniversary, under the motto, Talent Unlimited, the labor we need, the potential we can't waste. Welcome to the staff and students, as well as to our distinguished guests, our partners and collaborators from the city, the region, the rest of the Netherlands, and beyond. Now, I would like to start with a short public service announcement. We are hiring. is looking, among many other positions, for a managing director of our Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, a corporate information security officer, and a functionality manager for IT. If you have the relevant academic qualifications, around 10 years work experience in a similar position, and would be willing to move to Maastricht, please see me after. Now, we at pride ourselves on being very open and international. The most international university in the Netherlands, as it rightly says on a brochure. And it's true. Over 30% of our staff are international. But to be honest, I can't really take credit for that. It's quite organic. Firstly, because of geography. Many commute in from Belgium or Germany every day. And secondly, we need highly qualified people with specific skills. And there are more of those in the world than in the Netherlands. That's very limited freedom for steering here. Now, similarly, the reason many waiters in Maastricht apologize to half their customers for not speaking Dutch is that no Dutch person applied for their jobs. To be able to continue, cafes had to re-evaluate their ideas around waiters. And tapping into Maastricht's international identity and the sizable pool of affordable labor that comes with it was quite an obvious step, really. 60% of the Netherlands' income stems from international collaboration. There is a lot of really good research on this, but it also checks out intuitively. Just imagine the Port of Rotterdam's annual report if international business was excluded. You can make a very idealistic case for openness and international collaboration, for inclusion and a diverse workforce. But today I want to restrict myself to being pragmatic, to finding effective solutions for real problems. To do so, we need to understand our current situation. In Spain and Greece, a quarter of young people are unemployed. In Italy, it's a fifth. And that's a tragedy that urgently needs addressing. The Netherlands' youth unemployment rate, however, is the third lowest in the EU. Our job vacancy rate is the shared highest in the EU. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, there are almost 25,000 job vacancies in Limburg alone. We are facing the biggest labor market shortage in 50 years. There are several reasons for this. Demographics is one. Steadily declining birth rates since the baby boom mean the workforce, on average, is becoming older. A sizable chunk will start to retire soon. There is also a mismatch between the qualifications in demand and the ones present in the workforce. All of these factors affect krimpregio's, which is to say shrinking and overaging regions such as South Limburg, much more acutely. But a growing economy like ours needs labor. is doing important research on this, in particular concerning the immediate problems South Limburg is facing. That ties in neatly with our mission to address the big societal challenges. However, it's also a problem that we face as an employer. It is increasingly difficult to fill our vacancies. Again, if we bracket moral considerations entirely, and some people do, then we have to concede that there was a time when employers could merely discriminate against applicants because there was an oversupply of labor competing for vacancies. This imbalance of power is still culturally ingrained. But the economic reality has changed. Hiring someone isn't an act of charity. To survive and flourish, needs highly qualified and highly motivated people. And there is a limited supply of them, so they can pick and choose. We no longer have the luxury of limiting talent, of saying, well, you can do the thing I need, but for unrelated reasons, I don't fancy you. Free movement of labor to fit the diverging, fluctuating demands of the various European countries is one of the ideas behind the EU. An unemployed bioengineer from Spain could move to Maastricht to fill one of the vacancies on, for example, the Brightlands Camelot campus, with no additional administrative fuss. We could decide that she's too foreign, but then we'd have to find a Dutch bioengineer and co-exam to Sittard Geleen, which isn't trivial. Some actually think that Sittard is further away from Amsterdam than from Madrid, but that's another story. Not limiting talent here seems to be a good solution. Impeding the free movement of talent here hurts the talent. The Spanish bioengineer might have to move to Germany instead. But it also hurts our region. This becomes more intuitive when we think about a bioengineer from Reims instead. Also free movement of labor, sure, but not a lot of movement really. Does it feel reasonable to hold back our local economy and the talent in question because the 10-minute bike ride to work crosses a border? I'm not being uncritically pro-EU here. The lines around the Schengen area are somewhat arbitrary because a Mexican bioengineer is as non-Dutch as a Spanish one. And to try to see it from the other side, it's understandable how Spain would be reluctant to lose the talent they have paid to train. It's less comprehensible why we would want to refuse that talent. Don't get me wrong, this isn't a plea to siphon off other countries' talent pools. What of the talent right in front of our noses that we don't recognize? It might help to reconsider our idea of the ideal candidate and how pragmatic it actually is. Imagine an ideal employee now, and then ask yourself whether their gender, age, accent, ethnicity, etc., are actually relevant to the job. Are these maybe just cultural defaults we should never have cared about in the first place? We certainly no longer have the luxury of caring about them. Think of our notions around disability. A disability, visible or invisible, a chronic disease. Neurodivergence means that someone will be impaired to some degree, by definition. The question is more whether those impairments matter to the tasks at hand. Do these impairments clash with the tasks themselves or with the way the work is usually organized and the work environment? Now, as an employer, you might worry about the practical ramifications of hiring someone with a disability. You might have to adjust your workplace, your processes, your attitudes. And one can understand these concerns, but thinking, I can't find the talent to fill this position, but I refuse to take the minimum effort of even asking them what accommodations they would need and investigating what I can do to make those accommodations is morally wrong, lazy, irresponsible, illegal even. So let's take a step back and ask, are we doing enough to get the most out of our talent? The most out of everyone? How much talent goes to waste because of received ideas? Are reasonable accommodations for that person really that much of a trouble? Does the candidate really need to be young? Or is this just a matter of image? Do you really need a university degree for this position? Would a technical college degree do? Maybe a high school diploma, proven talent, and a lifelong learning trajectory. Is working full-time plus overtime the only way to fill this position? Couldn't two young parents share it between them? Shouldn't we, in such a fast-changing world, appreciate people's potential more and invest more into their continued development? Broadening our definition of talent always brings with it practical challenges. Extra education, improved accessibility, better communication, etc. This might require leaving our comfort zone, but the crucial effort is a shift in attitude. At UM, we want to lead by example and show the generation that we are educating what it means to be truly welcoming, to have the courage to question and transcend our biases, to be innovative, to take chances, and to keep learning. We need to see everyone as a precious resource. And if you find humanist reasoning around individual flourishing too drippy, well, then market pragmatism will do too. There are more vacancies than there are ideal candidates. If we don't question our ideas around talent, we will have an economic downturn. We will be poorer in every sense of the word. Whether we want to or not, we certainly have to allow everyone a challenge, a chance to grow, a chance to contribute. And to succeed as a whole, we need to give everyone a chance to make the most out of their potential, for their sake and ours. And that also calls for action from us as an employer. I am about to close, but before I do that, let me introduce the next part of today's program. Our keynote speaker, Professor Robert Deur, who is a professor of economics at Erasmus University, Rotterdam. Indeed, my perspective is very much informed by our university and the region whose flourishing is close to my heart. Professor Deur will offer us a broader and more strictly academic perspective in his Dies lecture entitled Empowering and Unlocking Talent to Tackle Society's Most Pressing Challenges. He will suggest evidence-based tools to increase productivity and thus address some of the issues I have outlined. I would like to wish you a wonderful Dies Natalis and welcome to the stage Professor Robert Deur.
Students and all other guests here today. Thank you very much for the invitation to give a keynote. I consider it a great honor to speak at this special occasion. Congratulations on the 48th anniversary of Maastricht University. I know Maastricht University as a university with a vibrant academic community. A university with a clear commitment to excellent academic research and innovative teaching methods. A university that is open to students from all over the world. And let's hope it can remain like that. And a university that is widely admired and highly respected. Congratulations on achieving all this, and I wish you all a very bright future. So today, we get together in highly uncertain, scary times. There are a bunch of societal challenges that we're facing all at the same time, and we need to deal with them. I've listed here a couple of them. The first is climate change. Climate change requires urgent and substantial investments and adjustments in our society. As a result of climate change, we will in the future more often experience extreme weather, such as the heavy rains and the flooding in 2021 here in the province of Limburg and right across the border in Germany, causing lots of tragedy and damage. We are also facing severe security concerns here in Europe with the Russian invasion of the Ukraine and at many other places in the world. The times of the peace dividends are over. It is clear that we need to invest much more to protect ourselves and others. As a result of wars and extreme weather, The number of refugees in the world has risen to record-breaking levels since World War II. And last but not least, we are facing serious threats to democracy and the rule of law in many countries, including ours. Excuse me. Could you please move one more slide? Yes, there it is. All right. So to tackle these issues, we need all talent, and we can't waste any potential, as the theme of this Dies Natalis rightly points out. Coming from a port city, Rotterdam, I'm inclined to say all hands on deck to deal with the challenges. But the problem is that many hands will actually leave the deck in the years and decades to come. Due to population aging, many people will retire, resulting in a big decline in the number of workers per retiree. This number will decline in many countries from about 4 in recent decades to only 2 in 20 years from now. So there will be only 2 workers per retiree, and of these 2 workers, about a third will work in healthcare or care. In light of these demographic developments and the major societal challenges discussed before, the question arises, can we keep our standards of living? Now, for that, we must become more productive. We need to make sure that labor productivity increases substantially. Now, what are the prospects for that? Well, if you look at the developments in the past decades, it is hard to be optimistic about this. Here in this figure you see labor productivity growth in the last, 5 decades or so. And as you can see, labor productivity growth in the last decades has been very slow. And even if you look carefully, you see it sort of declining over time. In other words, if we continue doing the things in the way we did them in the past, the prospects for high labor productivity growth do not seem high. So, how to become more productive? So, in the remainder of my keynote, I will highlight 3 promising ideas. Each of them is based on research. Now, these 3 ideas are, of course, not an exhaustive list. Fortunately, there are many other ideas around. And so, if none of these 3 work, then there's still hope. But I think that the ideas that I will pay attention to today, they deserve more attention and they have clear potential. And I hope I will be able to convince you of that. Now, for some of these ideas, the evidence is not yet conclusive. Okay? And so, as we work on implementing these ideas, it is important to collect more evidence. And academics can and should play a key role here. So what are the 3 ideas? So the first is make work more useful. Secondly, the rector already talked about it, fight discrimination. And finally, I will talk briefly about improving education choices. So all 3 ways to become more productive. So let's start with the first idea, make work more useful. So the idea is actually very simple. So when workers feel that they contribute to something useful, they work harder. When they feel their work is useless or even harmful, they typically try to minimize effort. So one way to increase productivity is to make sure that more people think that they work on something useful. Now, what is considered useful work? This is, of course, a highly subjective matter. What I see as highly useful may be seen by you as useless or even harmful. It depends on our political preferences, on our moral values, and on our beliefs of what we think is good, bad, or sort of neutral. And moreover, and adding to the fuzziness of the concept, the usefulness of work can be grossly misperceived. Now, I'll be more specific about that later, but first I want to talk a bit more about the question, how important is the perceived usefulness of work for the productivity of workers? Because in the last 5 to 10 years, there has been a number of interesting and I think reliable studies that have provided answers to this question, and they have shown that the effects of making work more useful can actually be quite spectacular. So I would like to highlight one of these studies. And the study took place in the US in 2012. This was the year when Barack Obama and Mitt Romney ran for president. To me, this feels like 20 years ago at least, but it's only 11 or 12 years ago. And a couple of months before the elections took place, two US economists, Jeffrey Carpenter and Eric Gong, they set up a field experiment. Now, and as part of the field experiment, they hired hundreds of students on their campus, and they hired them for a simple task. So in the job advertisement, it was announced, here's a job, simple task, it's one afternoon, and the task is stuffing letters into envelopes. Now, the pay was mentioned, and it was quite high, and so there were many applicants. And the two economists made sure to gather some data about these students beforehand, among others, their political preferences. So some of the students were known by the researchers to be supporters of Obama, and others were known by the researchers to support Romney. Now, upon arrival at the workplace, and after being seated, the students learned about the content of the letters they were supposed to process. It turned out to be presidential campaign letters. A random half of the students was assigned to stuff letters supporting the campaign of Obama, and the other half, in separate rooms, got the task to stuff letters supporting the campaign of Romney. Hence, some students ended up doing a job they probably find useful, contributing to the campaign of the candidate they like. They are matched well, you could say. Others, what you could call mismatched workers, they work for the campaign of the candidate they do not support. They probably consider their work not very useful, perhaps even harmful. Now, how much does this matching or mismatching matter for productivity? Well, it matters a lot, and that you can see in this graph over here. So first focus on the first two bars. The second bar shows the productivity of students whose political preferences match the job. So Obama supporters stuffing envelopes for Obama, and Romney supporters stuffing envelopes for Romney. Productivity is 15. It's quite high, as you can see. When there is a mismatch, that's the first bar in this chart, productivity is only 6. Hence, in this case, increasing the perceived usefulness of work almost tripled productivity. Now, the economist also played around a little bit with monetary bonuses that you can see in the third and the fourth bar. So what they did is a random part of the students were also promised bonuses for each envelope that they stuff. And the bonus was actually quite sizable. And as we can see in the graph, the bonuses work as expected. They increase productivity in both groups. But as we can also see, you can better have a worker with a matching political preference, the second bar, than a mismatched student who is highly incentivized with bonuses. Productivity is higher in the first case. And so missions here are more important than the substantial bonuses. Now, the subjects in this experiment are students. And I admit the kind of job is a little bit special. This is merely an illustration. Let's turn now to regular workers. To address two questions. How useful is the work, if you ask it to them, according to workers themselves? So the work that they do they find it useful? And secondly, how important is it for their motivation and for their productivity? Now, a few years ago, Max van Lent, an economist in Leiden, and we studied a huge data set covering more than 100,000 workers in close to 50 countries. And in the questionnaire, the question was asked, is your job useful for society? So that's one way in which a job can be useful for society. And here are the answers of these 100,000 workers. 75% of the workers agrees or strongly agrees that the job that they do is useful for society. We were a bit surprised by this. We were expecting actually lower percentages, so we were too pessimistic. A vast majority finds the work they do useful, and this holds not only in the public sector, of course the teachers and the nurses, 100% finds it useful. It also holds in business. Vast majority finds it useful for society. But there's also a substantial group, 1 out of 4 workers, who have doubts about the usefulness of their job. And in the remainder of our study, we mainly focus on them. How come they have doubts about the usefulness of their job? Now, and several reasons can be formulated for this, and I've here on this slide mentioned a couple of them. Partly it has to do with the kind of work that people do. So some people engage in harmful production and they know it. So for instance, people who work in sin industries, think of tobacco industry, gambling, betting, those kind of industries. People working in those industries are less likely to state that their work is useful. The same is true for particular occupations. Public relations officers, marketeers, finance managers, and yes, I hate to admit it, but also economists. They are overrepresented among those who fail to see the usefulness of their work. However, and I find it very important to stress this, also among these groups, a majority of workers do find their job useful. And so it's not only the kind of work or the occupation that matters, also other things matter, such as the way the work is organized or the way the people are managed. And I will return to some of this when we talk about what can be done to make work more useful. But let me first spend a bit more time on the consequences of perceived uselessness of work. So we already saw with the Obama-Romney study that there can be huge consequences for motivation and productivity. And these findings have also been replicated with more regular samples of workers, where, for instance, firms try to convince workers of the usefulness of the job they do, and then you see also that people start to become more productive. Productivity doesn't triple, of course, but also there you see quite substantial effects. Effects have also been found for the number of hours that people want to work, an important outcome measure in these times of labor shortages. People want to retire later. They want to retire years later if they find the job useful that they do. All of this implies that if in some way we can increase the usefulness of work, we can increase the productivity of our economy. But there's more, and these two messages I particularly address to those in the audience who run a firm or an organization and who may not yet been convinced about how important this is. There is secondly also evidence that workers who find their work useless or they are not convinced about the usefulness, they are less satisfied, are more likely to search for another job. Moreover, there are consequences also for wages. So wages tend to be higher if people tend to find their job less useful. And so, for instance, in the sin industries like tobacco and gambling and all that, it has been found that for otherwise similar workers, firms pay up to 30% higher wages. So people are compensated for doing these kind of jobs. Let me now turn to the question, are there ways to increase the usefulness of work? And I see a role here for both governments, for employers, and also for employees, and students, by the way. What about the role for governments? Governments should think more about the labor market consequences of their policies. Think of overly complex regulation that is imposed on businesses. It leads to a lot of work that is oftentimes considered unnecessary, considered as useless. We should also look at tax laws. Tax laws tend to be highly complicated. As a result, a whole industry of tax planners arises, who spend their time advising companies and rich families how to minimize their tax bill. These tax planners are typically highly qualified people who could do much more useful work somewhere else. By simplifying the tax laws, we can make the labor market work better, make our productivity higher. I also see a clear role for employers. Employers can increase the usefulness of work by improving management. I believe that managers should actively search for useless tasks performed under their leadership and try to embed them, or if these tasks are misperceived to be useless, explain better why they are in fact useful. Frequent and open communication with their subordinates may help in this respect. And then employees and students who will soon be employees too, they also have a role. If you care about the usefulness of your job, and from survey data we know that a vast majority of you cares about this. Be critical and selective. And when you accidentally end up in a useless or harmful job, don't sit down and give up. Speak out. Try to change matters. Here we can follow the example set by Mathieu Segers, professor of European history here in Maastricht, who passed away last December at a way too young age and who is dearly missed. In an in memoriam published in Observant, Mathieu Segers was quoted as follows: "I frequently doubt myself. I then wonder whether my work is relevant for myself, but also for others. If it isn't, something must be done." I now turn to the second idea, to increase productivity. The second idea is to fight discrimination. Here on this slide, you see a part of the Dutch Constitution. Chapter 1, Fundamental Rights, Article 1. All persons in the Netherlands shall be treated equally in equal circumstances. Discrimination on whatever ground shall not be permitted. Yet, and this was also already mentioned by the rector, labor market discrimination exists. And I would like to illustrate this with a personal story of Amin Assad, which you can here see on the slide. Amin Assad studied law in Utrecht. He completed a bachelor with very high grades, then you continued with a master, also very high grades, did all kind of other activities next to the studies. So he was very hopeful when he graduated that he would be able to find the job that he wanted. And in his case, he had the ambition to work for a big law firm. So he applied at several places, but he got rejected at all. No job interviews for Amin. "You do not fit the profile," was the typical reason mentioned in the rejection letter. And then he decided, how about if I apply at the very same places with a different name, as Arjan de Leeuw? Assad is the Arabic word for lion, in Dutch leeuw, and Amin, well, close to Arjan, so Arjan de Leeuw is not that far from the truth. And so he sent the very same letters with the very same resume to the very same firms. And guess what happens? The invitations for job interviews started coming in. Now, this is a very sad story, and it is not an incident. Researchers, both in economics and in other social sciences, have done literally hundreds of studies where they do what Amin did, but at a larger scale. Sending application letters to employers, signing them with either native-sounding names or foreign-sounding names. And what you see is, without exception, you see hugely different response rates from employers. Now, there have by now been so many of such studies that you can even use them to get an idea about how discrimination evolves over time. And here, I thought that, discrimination would at least decrease over time, no? With all the initiatives, diversity trainings, anti-discrimination policies and all that. But the answer is that it doesn't. It doesn't increase in the past 50 years. This is the time span that researchers can cover. And in the Netherlands, it has even increased in the past 50 years. Okay, now discrimination is illegal, it's unfair, but it is also unproductive. Why is that? Why is it unproductive? Well, first of all, there is suboptimal matching. If people are selected on the basis of other characteristics than their productivity suffers. Second, there can be important discouragement effects. If students anticipate discrimination in some sectors or occupations, they may decide not to train themselves at all in that direction, even if this would be the best fit for them in terms of their talents and motivations. And third, even if all these barriers are broken down, there can be important motivation effects. It has been shown that if you're surrounded by a discriminating manager, it reduces your productivity if you are discriminated against. And so, an important question is discrimination unavoidable? Because some people have argued It's unavoidable, you know, it's just part of human nature that we discriminate. And these people have also find support in those data. This discrimination is very persistent, that it's sort of constant in the last 5 decades, you know. There's nothing that helps, is the idea. But is it really? Is discrimination unavoidable? Since recently, because of an important piece of research, we know that the answer to this question is a clear no. The research was done by 3 US economists, Klein, Rose, and Walters. They did a massive study covering several years, where they sent thousands of job applications to over 100 of the largest firms in the US. And they signed with different names, native, foreign. They also changed the gender and other things. And here's what they found. Many employers do not discriminate. They just don't. They don't make a difference between whether the name is native or foreign, whether it's a black-sounding name or white-sounding name, whether it's a man or woman. Many employers do not discriminate. So the discrimination that we have observed in all these earlier studies, it's due to a selective group of employers who discriminate a lot. Now, these results make me quite optimistic. Apparently, it is possible to run a business, to be a large employer, and to not engage in systematic discrimination. Now, an important question then is, of course, what do these firms that do not discriminate, what do they do differently as compared to those who do discriminate? Now, and the study is silent on that, unfortunately. So they do cover a bit of ground, like it seems to make a difference whether you have a centralized HR department or not. There's also just correlational, and that's all there is. So I also talked with the authors of this study, and the next step that they are taking now, and that we should also take here in the Netherlands and in Europe, is to discover how come that some firms discriminate and others don't. And the best way to do this, to produce evidence for what works to fight discrimination, is to run experiments, and to do that at a big scale, give many ideas a chance. So far there have been some experiments. Mainly what they show is that things don't work. Okay? So diversity training, big RCT, no effect, which is sad, but well, that means also we need to focus our attention on something differently. I go to the third and last idea that I would like to cover, improving education choices. Like the other ideas, this idea is simple and intuitive. The starting point is that workers' productivity depends a lot on education. And not only number of years of education, but particularly also the type of education program. Now, essential education choices are made at a very young age. For instance, my son, Hugo, he is 14 years old, and before the summer starts, he needs to make a very important decision, namely the track to choose at high school. Such choices have the potential to be life-changing. They enable or disable follow-up study choices. Moreover, these education choices are not only important for the future of the student, but they're also important for society. As we struggle with major labor shortages in some areas and not in others, it would benefit society if more students choose education with good labor market prospects. Now, and these labor market prospects, they differ widely at all levels. For instance, for some types of university studies, recent graduates very quickly find a job. My favorite example is econometrics. Students who completed the study in econometrics, within 1 or 2 months, half of the students found a decent job. But there are also types of studies at the university where this can take up to 2.5 years. Imagine 2.5 years and only half of the students who graduated already found a decent job. Now, I see the rector looks a bit shocked by these numbers. But I anticipated that, so I looked it up, and none of the programs here in Maastricht have these numbers. I don't want to spoil the party, of course. But in Amsterdam and Leiden, they actually do. Okay, so what do students know about these labor market prospects? Do they knowingly choose study programs with bad labor market prospects, or are they seriously uninformed? Now, in a recent study, and that's the final one that I want to highlight. We collected data on this, and we is, in this case, DJ Fouard, professor here at Maastricht, at the School of Business and Economics, and Bart de Koning, who did his PhD here, and is now at Cornell University. And we collected data not from university students, but from teenagers in lower vocational education, for the Dutch people here at VMBO. And also these teenagers, they need to make important education choices at a very young age. So what do we see in the data? First of all, what we see in the data is that students are overly optimistic. They think that prospects are much better than they actually are, and the same holds for wages. So there's some built-in disappointment over here. Is it possible to correct these misperceptions that we also studied using a field experiment? And the answer is hidden in this figure. What you see in this figure is, first of all, the blue bars. The blue bars show you the students' misperception. And at 0, so that's in the middle, are the students who are exactly right. To the right are the students who are too optimistic. To the left, the students are too pessimistic. You see, it's left-schooled. There are more optimists and pessimists. And now the dotted lines are the ones we treated, that is, we provided them information about a set of relevant study programs. And as you can see, many more students now get it right. It moves up from 20 to about 50%. And so we managed to communicate important information, not to all students. I mean, these are teenagers after all, right? So many of them probably didn't pay too much attention, but it did stick with at least some of them. Now, the million-dollar question is, of course, did it also change their study choices? And we are actually currently working on this project. The preliminary answer is yes. There are some effects. And the effects are that students who have been informed about labor market prospects, they move in the direction of programs with better prospects. Now, the effects are not large. And typically, researchers are not happy when effects are small. But in this case, we are actually quite happy about small effects. Why? Well, of course, we don't want to move all of these students to just one single program that is really having good labor market prospects. Then you create surpluses where there are shortages now and the other way around. So there are modest effects of students who were sort of indifferent and doubted about different study programs, who we succeeded in moving towards programs with better prospects. And currently we are in the process of investigating whether they actually did well also during those studies. So results on that will become available in a couple of months or so. I will conclude my keynote lecture now with an optimistic look ahead. So I hope that I have convinced you that each of these 3 ideas is at least promising. But before widespread implementation, we need to produce more and better evidence. New evidence can best be produced in collaborations between academics, employers, governments, schools, and other organizations. Academics can bring to the table their expertise on what is known from the academic literature, and, maybe even more important, on how to produce solid evidence. Employers, schools, they can share their rich knowledge based on hands-on experience. And they can provide access to the field for researchers, for data collection and experimentation. Finally, governments, they can play the exact same role. But on top of that, they should also support such knowledge production financially and generously. Because knowledge is a public good. It's a public good from which we all benefit. Without government support, we can be assured that too little knowledge will be produced from a social welfare perspective. I am hopeful that by setting up such collaborations, we will find ways to deal with the huge societal challenges that are ahead of us. And I'm sure that Maastricht University will play a key role in this. And I thank you for your attention.
Charles and James are aside, not making a sound. Then they come walking right, and they say, hey, you boy, take a seat now. Black suits and ties, I've seen quite a few. Would you like a coffee, a tea, or a beer? Hey, no, we got business to do. Oh, and pens out, checks down, I suggest we skip formalities. You're a troublemaker, and now you're a money taker. And pack your bags, baby. This ain't a good place to stay. You won't catch me tomorrow, 'cause I'll be a runaway, yeah. Oh, this bright-eyed, beautiful future was going down, down. Was going down, down. Can you at least introduce yourselves? With Charles and James, we got this. We got this under control. We own your body and soul. We're taking casual agreement, only signed by one side. No, 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 no. We're Charles and James, yeah, Charles and James. Ladies and gentlemen, excuse me for a moment. Euro bills don't fall from the sky. I wish I'll be back in a moment, and we can talk about all that's left tonight. I walk to the back, turn around and smile so sweetly, and then bam, I'm out the door, and I'm running for my life. Oh, this bright-eyed, beautiful future was going down, down. Was going down, down. Can you at least introduce yourselves? We're Charles and James, we got this. We got this under control. We own your body and soul. We're taking casual agreement, only signed by one side. No, 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 no. We're Charles and James, we got this. We got this under control. We own your body and soul. We're taking casual agreement, only signed by one side. No, 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 no. We're Charles and James, Charles and James.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Dürr, for your very inspiring lecture. It was thought-provoking. It also gave us directions. And thank you also for confirming something we already knew, is that we are much better than Amsterdam or Leiden. So we are very happy to hear that from somebody from outside as well. Also, a great thank you to Josh Island, and I'm so pleased that we invited him today. He's a singer-songwriter, but he's also a talent. He is actually our alumnus from our Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, and we will hear more from him today. He will entertain us today with songs from his recently released new album. So thank you very much, Josh Oudendijk. Now we will proceed to the conferral of the honorary doctorates of this year. And we have the privilege of awarding 3 honorary doctorates today, with, and that's special, 2 being jointly conferred. Professors Hilke Dijkstra and Sophie van Honacker from the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences have recommended 2 prominent professors in their field who have been collaborating for a long time. After consultation with the University Council, the Board of Deans of Maastricht University is honored to award a joint honorary doctorate to Professors Lisbeth Hoge and Professor Gary Marks.
Dedicated to deepening the understanding of the complexities of political dynamics within Europe, the 2 pioneering professors, Lisbeth Hoge and Gary Marks, have seamlessly collaborated for over 3 decades, gifting us with outstanding new academic concepts, notably within the domains of multi-level governance and European integration. Lisbeth Hoge, W.R. Keenan, Distinguished Professor of Political Science at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill and Research Professor at the Robert Schuman Center for Advanced Studies at the European University Institute in Florence, earned her PhD from the Catholic University of Leuven. Gary Marks, Burton Craig Professor of Political Science at the same institution and also Research Professor at the Robert Schuman Center for Advanced Studies, was educated in England and received his PhD from Stanford University. Professors Hoge and Marks introduced the compelling concept of multi-level governance in the 1990s, a theory they have developed over the last 3 decades. The concept of multi-level governance clarifies the complex dynamics of governance across multiple levels, illustrating the interplay between supranational entities, national governments, and regional authorities. Their work helps us understand the changing role of states in today's world and enhances our comprehension of the ongoing process of European integration. Having received 2 advanced grants from the European Research Council, Professors Hoge and Marks were also honored with the prestigious Martha Derrick Book Award in 2023 for their publication, Multi-Level Governance and European Integration. This recognition underscores their lasting influence on federalism and intergovernmental relations.
Professors Hoge and Marks have advanced our understanding of the increasing dispersion of state authority to both subnational levels like the Belgian regions and communities, as well to international organizations like the UN. Their concept of multi-level governance has allowed us to better understand the organization and consequences of complex processes of governance.
The work of Professors Hoge and Marks has inspired a whole generation of scholars researching European integration, including many at this university. This is why we're truly grateful to serve as the promoters of Lisbeth Hoge and Gary Marks as honorary doctors at Maastricht University.
So may I invite Professor Hoge and Professor Marks, along with the promoters, Professor van Honacker and Professor Dijkstra, to please come forward.
By the authority vested in me by law and in conformity with the decision of the Board of Deans, I hereby confirm upon you, Professor Hoge and Professor Marks, the degrees of Doctor Honoris Causa and all the rights deriving therefrom by law and tradition. As evidence of this, I present to you the degree certificates signed by the Rector, the Dean of the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences, Professor Dijkstra, and myself, and affixed with the Great Seal of the University, and I put on your shoulders the kappa which signifies the honor bestowed upon you.
Professor Dijkstra will now read the laudatio. You can stay here. We can give the certificate back. Well, you'll get it back, I promise. Just to help you.
Thank you, Rector, esteemed colleagues, students. For the first time in the history of Maastricht University, we are conferring 2 honorary doctorates for a single joint achievement. Today, we are celebrating 3 decades-long collaboration between Professors Lisbeth Hogge and Gary Marks. We celebrate their concept of multi-level governance, which is particularly important in the field of European integration. Now, you may ask, what is this concept of multi-level governance? It is fundamentally about the understanding that human behavior is best coordinated at different levels to achieve public goods. So, for instance, if we want to take action against climate change, we certainly need to address this at a global level. And if we want to maintain our streets here in Maastricht, we look to our mayor and our local municipality. Yet what Professors Hogge and Marks tell us is that governance is also about communities. And the people, they care deeply about who exercises authority over them. Communities demand self-rule. Now, this demand for self-rule is often at odds with efficient cooperation. And therefore, multi-level governance is about the interactions between the levels and the politics that takes place behind them. This is probably most important in the area of European politics and European governance. I mean, there's a strong case to be made for efficient cooperation at the European level. Think of the internal market, that we have common standards, or foreign policy. Yet at the same time, we also know that our citizens are quite hesitant about being governed from Brussels rather than by the politicians that we know. So that encapsulates your concept of multi-level governance. Now, why do we care about that here in Maastricht and Maastricht University? First of all, I have to point at the Treaty of Maastricht. Throughout your work, you point out that the Treaty of Maastricht is really fundamental because it changed the relationship between the European Union and its citizens and domestic politics. So it's really a signifier in your work. Secondly, and we're here obviously in Maastricht and in Limburg, in the most southern city in the Netherlands, the most beautiful province of the Netherlands, and surrounded by other European countries. So we know a thing or two here about the forces of community, about self-rule, and of course also about the need for European cooperation. And finally, I think it's important to underline that here at Maastricht University, one of our core research themes is Europe in a globalizing world. Every day our students and colleagues are inspired by your work, but what's more, you've really helped us out with our own research. Over the last decades, you've helped us as PhDs, as postdocs, and as fellow colleagues. Indeed, the two of you have cared deeply about the community of European studies. And for these 3 reasons, Professor Sophie van Honacker and myself are very proud that you are here with us today and that we can confer upon you these honorary doctorates. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Dijkstra. I would now like to ask the promoters to take a seat and invite you to respond to this honorary doctorate.
We would like to thank the Executive Board and the College of Deans for this great honour. And we thank you, Professor Dijkstra and Professor van Honacker, for your very kind introduction. Now, when Lisbeth and I were formulating the concept, later the theory of multi-level governance, we would have been surprised, really shocked, to look into the future and see us standing here today. But we have had a lot of help on the way, from two people in particular, Bert Klanzemans and Hans Kamen, who invited us to the VU Amsterdam to take up what was then called a strategic chair. And we've been inspired by two very special doctoral students, Arjen Skakkel, who's here today, and Catherine de Vries, who we recruited in our chair in Amsterdam and who are now intellectual leaders of their own right. And not least, we'd like to give special thanks to a wider circle of people. We can't name them all, but several are here in this audience today, including Vice-Chancellor Charlie Jeffrey, people who've made us look better than we really are by putting multi-level governance to better use than we could have ever dreamt of. This is all possible because multi-level governance is a theoretical idea. You might say it is just a tool. And people who know much more than we about some field of policy making, integrating immigrants, sustaining the environment, or urban development, for example, can use it for their own purposes. And these include policymakers in international organizations, such as the European Union, the United Nations, and the OECD. In this big picture, our careers, I think, contain a small lesson, a lesson in unanticipated consequences, because you simply can't tell what an invention or discovery will lead to. And if you're lucky, as we are, a theoretical idea can motivate people to do things or to think things that are far beyond one's own powers. The lesson for us is that it makes no sense at all, to put research into two mutually exclusive categories, theory versus practice. Because theory can turn out to be practical in ways that one can't predict. Boolean algebra, for example, was a purely mathematical construct developed in the 19th century.
Which became the basis for Turing's universal computing machine. Yeah, this is how we usually work. Gary starts a sentence and I finish it, or the reverse. Sometimes people ask us, which of us thought of this or that idea? And the answer is really very simple. It was the two of us. I do want to say it's a really special honor to be the first couple to receive an honorary doctorate at Maastricht University. We are deeply grateful for this recognition, and it seems particularly fitting that we are here in Maastricht, Professor Dijkstra already pointed out, because Maastricht has really special meaning intellectually as well as personally. As Professor Dijkstra pointed out, the Treaty of Maastricht symbolizes a watershed in the European Union. It deepened what is the world's most important political experiment. And in the process, it launched the European Union as a system of multi-level governance. And perhaps inspired by Maastricht's historical role, the Department of Political Science has become a leader in research on multi-level governance, as was masterfully on display at the departmental roundtable this morning. More generally, the Netherlands has been a very special place for us, for it was here that we got down to the brass tacks of multi-level governance. How apt, with hindsight, that the Netherlands became our place of work, because this country is a striking example of the benefits of multi-level governance when, 4 centuries ago, fiercely independent provinces combined to achieve scale in defense against you-know-who. There are times when independence requires transnational governance. And perhaps the invasion of Ukraine is also one of those times for all of us in Europe and beyond. We built multi-level governance into a theory here, on Dutch soil. We could make headway because some wonderful doctoral students and postdocs took the journey with us. Gary mentioned two. There's also Hannah Kleider, Sari Nitsiecki, Sarah Scher Rosenfield, Sandy Chapman on subnational governance, Tobias Lenz, Bezir Seka, Svet Erderian, Janine Bezayan on international governance. People with various talents from very diverse backgrounds, by the way. Thank you, friends, now colleagues. We would not be here without you. Hopefully, and in conclusion, this is a stage along an ongoing journey of scientific inquiry. We are so thankful for your encouragement, and just as we looked forward to this moment over the past months with excitement and mixed with amazement, really, we will remember this day with deep pleasure and appreciation. Gary and Lisbeth are not done. You are not done, particularly the younger people in the audience. We all are not done. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Hoge, Professor Marx, for your inspiring words. We are pleased and also very proud to have you as our honorary doctors. We will now present a third honorary doctorate to a distinguished professor and expert recommended by Professor Anne van Stralen from our School of Business and Economics. Following the consultation with the University Council, the Board of Deans of Maastricht University is honored to confer the honorary doctorate upon Professor Christian Leutz.
Professor Christian Leutz stands as an esteemed international scholar, leaving an indelible mark on accounting, finance, and institutional economics. His profound research and unwavering commitment to advancing knowledge have positioned him as an influential thought leader in his field. Professor Leutz, born in Germany, attained his PhD and habilitation at Goethe University Frankfurt. Presently, he serves as the Charles F. Pohl Distinguished Service Professor of Accounting and Finance at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. Professor Leutz studies the role of disclosure and transparency in capital markets and other settings, including sustainability and ESG. Recently, his study in Science, one of the world's top academic journals, examined the environmental impact of unconventional oil and gas on surface waters, which is a major concern. Professor Leutz has received multiple awards. Thomson Reuters recognized him as a highly cited researcher, featuring him for 5 consecutive years among the world's most influential scientific minds.
Professor Leutz is a role model for many European scholars in accounting and finance. He has gained recognition for his work on the economic impacts of important changes in regulation and transparency, offering valuable insights, not just to academia, but also holding high relevance for policymakers. Beyond his impressive research accomplishments, Professor Leutz is known for his mentorship and dedication to fostering the next generation of scholars. He brings immense value to Maastricht University and the School of Business and Economics. His work on critical topics like sustainability, resilience, and corporate social responsibility aligns seamlessly with our commitment to addressing societal challenges through research and education. This is why I'm truly grateful to serve as the promoter of Christian Leutz as honorary doctor at Maastricht University.
So may I now invite Professor van Stralen and Professor Leutz to come forward.
Okay, so let me tell me a bit more about the work of Professor Christian Lloyds and why it is innovative and shapes policy discussions worldwide. As an illustration, his most cited article to date examines systematic differences in earnings management across different countries. His paper predicts and finds that earnings management decreases in investor protection because strong protection limits insiders' ability to acquire private control benefits, which reduces their incentives to mask firm performance. These findings suggest an endogenous link between corporate governance and the quality of reported earnings, and is considered seminal work in international accounting research and corporate governance. Further, much of Christian Lloyd's work assesses the economic consequences of important changes in regulation, which not only contributes to the academic literature, but is also highly relevant to policymakers. To illustrate, Christian Lloyd's was the first to investigate the economic consequences of the adoption of the international financial reporting standards around the world. The European Commission made the use of these standards mandatory for public interest entities in the EU with the intention to increase the comparability and quality of financial reporting across countries for the benefit of the capital market. Christian Lloyd's found that the capital market benefits occur only in countries where firms have incentives to be transparent and where legal enforcement is strong, underscoring the central importance of firms' reporting incentives and countries' enforcement regimes for the quality of financial reporting. Another example of policy-relevant research was his work on the financial crisis. Christian Lloyd's examined banks' disclosure and loss recognition and identified several core issues for the link between accounting and financial stability. In 2020, Christian Lloyd's was asked for a policy briefing for the European Parliament on the Wirecard scandal in Germany. He made suggestions for the market and institutional oversight architecture in Germany and Europe, since all lines of defense against corporate fraud, including internal control systems, external audits, the oversight bodies, and the market supervisor, contributed to this scandal and need reform. Christian Lloyd's is also known for giving methodological advice to scholars, and he's heavily cited for his review articles discussing research challenges and how to move forward. Christian Lloyd's most recent work on sustainability and ESG, a major theme for many universities, including Maastricht University, will provide an important impetus for accounting research in this area. His two recent publications, both in Science, one on the impact of unconventional oil and gas development on surface waters, which we have seen in the video, and the other published on mandatory disclosures which could reveal corporate carbon damages, further underscore the relevance and impact of his work for policymakers and society. As Christian mentioned in his interview with our university, the policy relevance of my research has always been important to me. As academics, we are given a tremendous amount of freedom. That's why I find it important to give back to society. By sharing the implications of our work, we can hopefully make the world a little better. Dear Christian, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to confer upon you this honorary doctorate. Your lecture this morning to SBE has been inspiring, and we look forward to future exchanges of ideas and to inspire the next generation of students, scholars, and leaders in academia and business.
Please all rise.
By the authority vested in me by law, and in conformity with the decision of the Board of Deans, I hereby confer upon you, Professor Lloyds, the degree of Doctor Honoris Causa and all the rights deriving therefrom by law and tradition. As evidence of this, I present to you the degree certificate signed by the rector, the dean of the School of Business Economics, and myself, affixed with a great seal of the university, and I put on your shoulders the kappa, which signifies the honor bestowed upon you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Please be seated.
I'm hugely honored, and I have to say also a bit overwhelmed by this wonderful ceremony, the setting, which is amazing. My sincere thanks to the Executive Board, the Board of Deans, the University Council, the Rector, and my colleagues in Accounting and Finance, as well, and especially my host and supervisor, Anne van Stralen. In academe, we stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Moreover, we could not do our work without the support of co-authors, friends, and family, and I thank them as well, and I'm very pleased that some of them are here today. Academic work is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It takes years to conduct and publish research, and even longer to see its impact, which is why it's very special when one's work is eventually recognized in this way. In its letter informing me of the honorary doctorate, the university highlighted, and I quote, "Our university, with economics, public policy, and sustainability as what's one of its main research themes, aspires to translate research findings into tangible information for businesses and governments directly benefiting the society." It is this aspiration that I want to focus my remarks on. In recent years, we've seen a significant push to use transparency and disclosure as a policy tool to address environmental and societal issues. This morning, I talked about whether transparency can indeed help us address these problems. The policy implications, as Anne mentioned, have always been important for me, and from the very beginning, I've strived to provide evidence that could help us improve regulation in various areas. Through my work, I've learned transparency is not a panacea, and mandatory disclosure can have unintended consequences, just like any other policy or regulation. Therefore, transparency regimes need careful assessments. A common response to the concern about unintended consequences is evidence-based policymaking, by which we mean a rigorous attempt to base policy decisions on new regulation on scientific research and empirical assessments, including impact studies, cost-benefit analyses. The appeal of evidence-based policymaking is fairly obvious. Policymaking rooted in sound theory and evidence should lead to better regulations and should also be more resilient to political pressures and lobbying. Smart rules provide guardrails like those on highways and racetracks rather than being bureaucratic obstacles. For these reasons, policymakers and regulators increasingly espouse a more evidence-based approach. I saw this up close when working with various regulatory and oversight bodies over the years, including the Dutch Authority for Financial Markets, which gave me this opportunity very early in my career. In working with regulators and standard setters, I also learned that evidence-based policymaking is easier said than done. For one, we don't always have the necessary evidence, which is also something that Robert emphasized. And in my mind, it takes substantial investment, not just in the research itself, but also into the impartial aggregation and transmission of the research findings to the policymakers and society. In essence, we must create an infrastructure to support it. In this, we can learn from medicine, though admittedly in a more aspirational way. The core of evidence-based medicine is to apply the best available research to clinical decision-making. It emphasizes the systematic accumulation of clinical research for practice guidelines, and this approach has become the leading paradigm of clinical practice and is viewed as one of the 15 most important milestones in medicine, along with the discovery of antibiotics. But the development of evidence-based medicine was a concerted effort that took decades. It started in the 70s with the vision of researchers at Maastricht University in Canada. Initially, they focused on developing methods that could develop solid and causal evidence. This effort eventually led to the randomized control trials and experiments becoming the gold standard in medicine. For various reasons, it's harder to do experiments for policies. We typically cannot randomly assign different rules to firms or people, and as a result, research often has to rely on observational data and outcomes without randomization. This makes it harder to extract causal evidence. But medicine faces similar issues in areas where it's not possible or unethical to use random assignment. The ability to establish a causal relation or evidence is fundamentally a data problem. So one way in which medicine has mitigated the infeasibility of randomized control trials in some of its areas is by bringing large amounts of data, essentially for populations, to bear. We would need a similar effort for financial and other regulation. But for this, we need the help from regulators and firms. They need to collect and share relevant data. The objection to this will, of course, be the administrative burden and the sensitive nature of the data. But we can't have it both ways. If we're concerned about poor regulation and that it imposes burdens and stifles innovation, then we need to find ways to study and improve regulatory regimes. Lastly, we need to be much more diligent and deliberate about the aggregation and transmission of our research. Typically, we publish an article, we highlight the policy relevance, and then hope that the findings somehow make their way to the policymakers. That's not enough. Evidence-based medicine invented the Cochrane reviews, which systematically review the literature and evaluate it to provide practice guidelines. These reviews at times involve over 100 researchers. They follow explicit rules on how to aggregate the findings depending on the strengths of the designs of the studies. Such rules limit the influence of commercial interests and the risk that scientists pursue agendas. In my field, we have not made such investments, and so we're still far from what is needed for evidence-based policymaking. But it would be important. The world has become more polarized. This polarization threatens many institutions, including the process of policymaking. Therefore, facts and evidence and the faithful translation of the findings are ever more important. To be clear, we researchers are not the ones driving the bus. The role of researchers and universities is to inform and advise, and the policies are ultimately decided by policymakers who use judgment and are elected and appointed through democratic processes. But with concerted effort and investment, we could make significant progress towards a more systematic use of evidence in policy. I fear without it, we pay lip service to the idea and will not deliver the tangible benefits to society that we could. This is why the ambitions of Maastricht University in this regard are so important, and why I'm very proud to carry its honorary doctorate. Thank you very much.
Don't be shy of being tough. A step at a time is more than enough. You got nothing to lose, you give it a try. You fight real hard to cut through the rough. And if you're standing in the rain, nothing is the same, but don't you give up. Rewind and start over again, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again. Rewind, rewind, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again. Rewind, rewind. Don't be shy of being stuck. We all got days we run out of luck. Don't shy away from courage, hail new beginnings. That is just how it should be. And if you're standing in the rain, nothing is the same, but don't you give up. Rewind and start over again, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again. Rewind, rewind, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again. Rewind, rewind, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again, oh, oh. Start over again. Rewind, rewind. If you ever standing in the rain and nothing ever feels like the same, a step at a time, a step at a time, a step at a time, a step at a time. Don't you give up, don't you give up. Rewind, rewind, rewind.
Thank you, Josh Island. Thank you again for a wonderful song. Thank you also, Professor Lloyds, for your inspiring words. We are really pleased to have you as our honorary doctor. Now, some of you may have noticed the difference between the two procedures. I wish I could say that it was on purpose to keep you awake and to give you something to talk about later at the reception, but I must admit it was my fault. Now you can still discuss which one was the right one. So, now moving on. Let me see if not to make any more mistakes. We are moving on to the next part of our program. To us, as a university, education is fundamental. Students are fundamental, teachers are fundamental. We take pride in fostering achievements and collaborations among our staff that drive this crucial aspect. This is why each year we present the Winand Wijnen Education Prize. This prize acknowledges the members of our staff who have made an exceptional contribution to education. And let us have a look at this year's winners together.
The Winand Wijnen Education Prize, named after one of the founders of the university, is a prize for people at UM whose efforts to improve UM teaching has earned them a place in the spotlight.
When you think of university as a high school student, you don't really know what it entails, so you don't really know what to expect. And I think Teens College really gives a perspective as to what will happen in a normal day-to-day lesson. And I think that also puts you at ease at making a choice or making it more or less scary for choosing a university.
10 years ago, I was in contact with some teachers from high schools here in the neighborhood of Maastricht. And they sort of noticed that there's a group of students like 15, 16 years old. They're really smart, but they sort of miss the motivation to study. So the idea was to already introduce them at problem-based learning and what that might bring them.
The program of the Teens College consists of 9 lectures, and we also have some working groups. So the high school students who have been selected by their teachers at high school start with a lecture, general lecture, and with their tutor they have been assigned to, they work in the afternoon during a research class. At the end of the whole program, at the end of these 9 weeks, they present their results on their topic during what we call a mini symposium.
At the project, we learned about the Second World War in different lectures, and some of them contained some topics about psychology or the war itself, or if it is good versus evil.
Teens College is an adventure, I would say. Every week a new professor in a new building, reading scientific articles in English. So when students participate in Teens College, they grow so much on so many levels.
And I think it's important for high school students in the region to be offered a broad variety of programs. And so if we would be able to include STEM Teens College or a Beta Teens College, that would be the cherry on the cake.
Sometimes I see students in a lecture hall and I think, 5 years ago you were in Teens College.
Well, first of all, I had really a broad perspective and a broad choosing of which university I want to go to, so it was really difficult to make a choice because they had so much to offer. But when you really join the project and really experience it, you see what the university has to offer, and that's why I made my choice to hopefully later attend Maastricht.
Teens College is only possible with the help of a lot of colleagues. The team is led by a very motivating professor, Bert Smeets. He, together with Bianca van den Bos, is in the center of it all and so very much devoted to this project.
Firstly, I would like to say that we are incredibly proud of all the impressive initiatives that make our education innovative and of top quality, and of our staff that makes these initiatives possible. It is not without a reason that we are better than Amsterdam. Congratulations to the members of Teens College for winning the prize. Your initiative has a significant impact on young people, encouraging them to learn more about our university and academia in general. This contributes to keeping talent in our region, and as I mentioned in the beginning, this is really, really important. I had the pleasure of actually attending last year's final event of Teens College, and I was truly, truly impressed by the creativity and enthusiasm of its young participants. And now I would like to invite Professor Bert Smeets to come forward and receive the prize on stage on behalf of Teens College. Wat leuk, hè? Wist je het niet? Je wist het echt niet. Kijk eens. I hereby award to you the Winnend Wijnen Onderwijsprijs for 2023 to you and your colleagues from Teens College.
Thank you.
We have a flower. Yeah. Yes. We would like you to say a few words what this prize means to you. And there is a microphone here. There you are.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Wow. Teens College got the Winnend Wijnen Education Prize. Many thanks for the students who fought for us and the jury who awarded us the prize. And what is Teens College? As you saw, it's not a regular teaching activity. It's an initiative to connect as a university to the society around us. Teens College was established 10 years ago by Caroline Martijn. She's sitting over there. Who had the bright idea I'll bring you the flowers in a moment. who had the bright idea to transfer our university to the minds and homes of 16-year-old school kids in Limburg and Aachen. This was achieved by weekly teaching and research activities around the theme of war and violence, offered by the different faculties of our university. And Caroline's initiative has been successful for all these years, built on lectures from Roberta Haar, she's over there, Mark Levels, who could not join, unfortunately, Kai Koros, who is also here, André Klipp, who is in the US, and me. And with research help from Rick Kams and Von Stasse, and organizational support of Noël Tilly, Denise Valerius, and Eline Rief. Obviously, this would not have been possible without Bianca van den Bos and our yearly teams of international student tutors who enthusiastically support their kids in their university experience. And last but not least, our rectors always participate in the final meeting in the aula when the students present research posters for their teachers and parents to earn their certificates. And our rectors not just there for the pictures. It's true commitment in time and attention, and that's key. Dean's College is in the heart of all those who contribute, and that's the prime reason for its success. And you still may wonder why the university should reach out to these kids. As a biologist, I see our university students as the flowers of their generation, who in their professional life will become the fruits of our society. But without seeds and the right soil, there will be no flowers and no fruits. And that is exactly the value of Dean's College. Dean's College makes the seeds land on the academic soil of our university with all the nutrients we can offer. It breaks down the ivory tower for kids and their families who might never have thought that the university would be a part of the environment that would make them flourish. And isn't that what inclusive education is all about? Thank you for the award on behalf of the entire Dean's College team. Thank you.
Nemen we straks al mee naar het... Ja. Thank you, Bert. Really, really nice words and a real teamwork. I've seen that last year, and I hope you will continue with the Dean's College, which continues to be important for the university. Now, this morning, we awarded the Best Bachelor Student Prizes 2023 to 22 bachelor students during a separate ceremony. And these student prizes honor the best theses from all faculties. It was really inspiring to see the unique perspectives and topics addressed this year. For those of you who are interested, you can still watch the video of the ceremony on our Dies Natalis webpage. And we would like to give you a glimpse of the 22 winners, because we are truly proud of them. Here they are. We did this in a hybrid way. It was online, so they were out there, I was in the building, and this time they also had the chance to react very briefly, and it was really, really nice and interactive. So congratulations again. In addition to the Bachelor Student Prizes, Stichting Wetenschapsbeoefening UM acknowledges 1 or 2 master students per faculty for outstanding academic achievements each year. This recognition includes a prize of €500 along with an award certificate. And we are pleased to announce the 8 winners of the Master Student Prizes of 2023. In the following video, they will briefly present their intriguing thesis topics.
My thesis is about expanding the cognitive battlefield and the role of social media in information warfare. So I'm looking at social media as a public sphere. So I discovered that information warfare as a concept is differently understood in different contexts. So meaning that information warfare in the West looks different than information warfare in authoritarian regimes like Russia, for example. So what the concept means and what the concept entails is very different depending on the context it happens in.
My thesis examined the role of international law in cases where a state is causing harm to its own domestic environment. So the focus is neither on clearly transboundary environmental issues or global issues such as climate change, but rather cases in which a state is willingly causing destruction to its own territory. We can think, for example, about Brazil, where the destruction of the Amazon was at its peak. And even though this is domestic, we can still say this has consequences for the rest of our world. Hence, I wondered in my thesis whether states can actually be held responsible under international law for these kinds of primarily domestic environmental matters.
My thesis is about epigenetic modulation of T cells for application as immunotherapy in cancer. What we discovered is that certain knockouts or removal of a gene, epigenetic gene, caused T cells to be less exhausted so that the therapy is more effective against pancreatic cancer. And yeah, for pancreatic cancer there is no treatment as yet, an effective treatment apart from surgery. So it's really a groundbreaking discovery that this immunotherapy could in the future be applied for pancreatic cancer. The primary aim of my thesis is to investigate whether an individual's willingness to undertake workplace training can be meaningfully increased by altering characteristics of the training itself. Beyond this, I also investigated whether and how these training-based mechanisms are influenced by the age and/or degree of career plateauing experience through analyzing the moderating impact of age and career plateau on the training characteristics. One relationship in particular stands out, and that is that age did not significantly reduce the influence of training's transferability to the private life on the decision to train.
So in my thesis, I investigated the neural basis of speech. We just recorded conversations from people. They were talking to their friends, to their families, and also recorded the neural signals concurrently. And this gives us a very rich and big data set of open-ended, natural conversations where each conversation has its own context and purpose. So what we do is we extract internal representations from those deep language models, and then we're using machine learning techniques to establish a mapping between the model representation and the neural signal.
My thesis was about the assessment of burden of clinical conditions, which is also called the APCC tool. The prevalence of people with chronic conditions is rising, and the care for these people with multi-mobility could be more patient-centered, and the APCC tool could help with that. And I studied whether the APCC tool is valid and reliable in people with both COPD and chronic heart failure. The questionnaire consists of 26 questions, and it gives an easy insight how it's going with the health of the patient, so they can adjust their treatment according to the results.
My thesis was about whether we could use DNA methylation data derived from the blood to assess a person's risk of developing dementia. For this, we first assessed an array of feature selection and machine learning methods, after which we could use the best performing technique to establish a DNA methylation risk factor model. So we discovered that DNA methylation could potentially be used as a valuable marker to assess a person's risk of developing cognitive impairments and dementia in the future.
My thesis was about narratives. We looked at when we tell stories to people, whether this changes their beliefs and also behaviors. And in this specific case, we looked at policy problems around nuclear power plant construction in the Netherlands. And we looked at whether people would pay more if they were given a story about nuclear power beforehand versus if they were not. And here we saw that people actually invested 20% more money if they were exposed to a nuclear positive story beforehand.
I would say talent unlimited, isn't it? Really, really inspiring, and it makes you almost go back and study again. Right, Rianne? Our winners are here today. Unfortunately, only Anne-Sophie Opper could not be here, but we also congratulate her. And I would now like to ask all the winners to come forward. Get your certificates, they are under your chairs. It's all prepared. And please come here for a photo moment. Okay, congratulations. We will have a photo. Congratulations. Well done. Gefeliciteerd. Congratulations. Gefeliciteerd. Congratulations. Very well done. Right. How many hands, right? There you have. Yeah. Is it going to work, the photo? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Gefeliciteerd weer. Congratulations. That's me. And one more. And then we will try to satisfy the photographer that it is all about. There you are. So where would you like? Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Please have a seat again. Thank you and congratulations. I really hope that this award is also motivation for you to pursue and maybe an academic career in the future. Now, it is my pleasure to award the Dissertation Prize. This prize marks another significant highlight in our celebration of outstanding achievements within our university. And I would like to ask Professor Monica Klaas, on behalf of the Professors Fund, to come forward and announce the winner of the Dissertation Prize 2023. Monica, please.
The Dissertation Prize is awarded alternately to the Randwijk and the Inner City Cluster. And this year, the honor goes to Randwijk, which includes the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience, the Faculty of Health, Medicine and Life Sciences, and the Faculty of Science and Engineering. Now, please see all of this year's nominees on the slides. And as you can see, this is a very diverse set of nominations. All these nominations, all these nominees deserve a round of applause. The prize consists of a beautiful sculpture and €3,500 granted from the Professors Fund, which you are all very welcome to support financially. Now, despite the high quality of all the dissertations that were nominated and despite their great diversity, the jury, consisting of the members that you can see on the screens, reached a unanimous decision. The 2023 Dissertation Prize goes to Sven Hildebrand, from the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience for his thesis, Investigating Human Neocortical Architecture in 3D, New Approaches for Clearing, Labeling and Imaging Large Samples.
I was very surprised when I heard that I won the dissertation prize right before Christmas, and I feel very honored that I got it. It means that other people at the university also perceived my work as high quality and important, so of course that makes me incredibly happy. Yeah, my dissertation was, in the broader sense, about neuroanatomy. So I wanted to investigate the brain structure at the microscopic level. In order to do this, we wanted to use a relatively new method that is called optical tissue clearing, where you can actually use samples that are up to 1,000 times thicker than your standard sample. And then you can actually turn them transparent like this. Ultimately, I could come up with not just one but several methods to turn the brain transparent for different kinds of questions and for different structures of interest. And so this allows you to still shine light through it with specialized microscopy techniques and thereby acquire three-dimensional information. I think there is a big potential for pathological investigations, for diagnostic purposes, which I think is something that the field will move to in the future.
Truly fascinating. Sven Hildebrand, could I now ask you to come to the stage? So in its, as said, unanimous decision, the jury was very much impressed with the innovative way in which you investigated the microscopic architecture of the human neocortex involving tissue clearing. The dissertation is truly innovative, containing groundbreaking methodological developments and outstanding experimental studies. In short, it's a prize well deserved. Congratulations. Yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this here. So Sven, could you briefly tell us what this prize means to you?
Thank you. Yeah, obviously I'm extremely proud and honored to have received this prize. As you already saw in the video, my work was very fundamental and methods-oriented, so I'm especially happy that the committee saw the potential, or maybe I should say the usefulness after the keynote lecture of this work. And yeah, also because finishing the PhD in the middle of the COVID pandemic was also not easy. So I have to thank all my supervisors and team members, because this PhD was also very much a team science effort, and this came maybe not out so much in the video, but without help from colleagues who are experts in, for example, data analysis or data acquisition, there simply would not have been a thesis like this. So I'm very happy for that. And last but not least, I'm of course extremely happy to have something concrete that I could show to my family and friends that their years of support throughout the studies and the PhD, financially and otherwise, paid off in a way. So to all of those, thank you.
For my last piece tonight, before I play that, I would like to thank you very much for the invitation. I had a wonderful time at FASOS, even though I went into music. And for this last piece, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to have the UM choir here to sing? Now, unfortunately, the doors are not opening and the UM choir comes marching in. They unfortunately declined. But we have you tonight. And as we're singing Ode to Joy, I would love to invite you to hum along to the melody, which is very familiar. And if not, we're going to repeat it 3 or 4 times. So by the end, I expect everyone, all the way to the back row, to join in, okay? It goes like this. Na 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 na. And every time a little bit louder. Freude schöner Götterfunken, Tochter aus Elysium. Wir betreten feuertrunken, himmlische dein Heiligtum. Deine Zauber binden wieder, was die Mode streng geteilt. Alle Menschen werden Brüder, wo dein sanfter Flügel weilt. Na, 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 wem der große Wurf gelungen, eines Freundes Freund zu sein, wer ein holdes Weib errungen, mische seinen Jubel ein. Ja, wer auch nur eine Seele nennt auf dem Erdenrund, und wer's nie gekonnt, der stehle, weinen sich aus diesem Bund. Na, 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 louder. Na, 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 na. Freude trinken alle Wesen an den Brüsten der Natur. Alle Guten, alle Bösen folgen ihrer Rosenspur. Küsse gab sie uns und Reben, einen Freund geprüft am Tod. Wohllos ward dem Wurm gegeben und der Cherub steht vor Gott. Na, 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 na. One more time. Na, 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 na,
Thank you very much, George. Thank you for your contribution. I think everybody enjoyed it very much. I certainly did, and maybe I should come also to talk with you to see how you get all these people do what you want them to do. Anyhow, dear distinguished guests, dear students, dear colleagues, this marks the end of the celebration of our 48th anniversary. It has been yet another inspiring gathering, and I really hope you enjoyed it. I invite you now to join us for the reception at the Minderbroedersberg. And this year, the appetizers will be prepared by the restaurant Mes Amis, and these are our neighbors just down the street on the Tongersestraat. And we always try to collaborate with local, young, ambitious entrepreneurs, such as the head chef of Mes Amis, Patrick Doulen. I look forward to seeing you all there, and please remain seated for just another moment and have so that the cortege, the procession can leave the church first, and also the people seated in the first row in front of me will follow. After that, you can all leave the church. So thank you again for coming. Again, I hope you enjoyed, and thank you for celebrating with us. Have a wonderful evening.